All right, we'll go ahead and start. Work sessions are an opportunity for board members to discuss issues informally with staff and invited guests. The board encourages members of the public to attend work sessions and to listen to the discussion, but there's generally no opportunity for public comment. Members of the public wishing to address the board are welcome to do so during the board's regularly scheduled meetings. So we are going to deviate a little bit from our agenda this evening. We do have an executive session that we will hold right now for 15 minutes. This executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192.660 subset 2 subset E. H, my fault there, H, to consult with counsel concerning the legal rights and duties of a public body with regard to current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. All right, so we're gonna.
I'm just making sure everybody else is off and not.
Representatives of the news media and designated persons shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session. And at the end of the executive session, the Board of Commissioners will reconvene in open session. Yeah, Rhiannon and Zach, apologize. We've had some things come up. We had an executive session, then we had some technical issues. So we're joining you a little late here. And so it'll be a truncated update. But we'd love to hear from you guys post-election. So we'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you so much, commissioners. We're really excited to be here. I guess I drew the short stick here and I was planning to speak about some of the election impacts, but Zach, you feel free to come off mute and jump in at any point if I miss anything. So of course, we're not here to cover, I apologize. Ryan Gleason with CFM Advocates. Thank you so much for having me. As mentioned, we're not here to talk about what's happening on the federal level. I think Kirby and Michael from our team at CFM will be able to give you a much better overview than Zach and I can. But obviously, there will be a significant impact on every state with a new administration, and that happens every time an administration changes. But here in Oregon, things remain relatively constant and the political landscape didn't change too much. In Oregon, we had 3 statewide offices on the ballot, and Democrats retained statewide control of those offices with the Secretary of State, Treasurer, and the Attorney General's office. And with the flipping of a Central Oregon Senate seat, the Senate Democrats are poised to take over in 2025 with a supermajority. And that's important for a couple reasons. That means that Democrats alone would have enough votes in the Senate to pass a tax increase measure without having to consult or get votes from their Republican colleagues. I want to be very clear that this is not a quorum-proof majority and that there would still need to be 20 senators on the floor to be able to conduct any business. And there will be 18 Democrats in the Democratic caucus. The House, a little different, still under Democratic control, but they did not, as they were expected to do, reach that supermajority status. It's particularly interesting as the legislature is considering a transportation package. That was going to be one of the things that we are going to talk through with you today. Which is more than likely to have revenue raising components. You're probably very familiar with the fact that ODOT is experiencing significant budget shortfalls, and a revenue raising package would be the only fix to that. So as our middle school social studies teachers would be rolling over in their graves if we didn't remind you that all revenue raising bills must start in the House. So regardless of having the votes needed to pass something in the Senate, Democrats still need Republican support in the House to pass a package. So I'm going to pass it over to Zach to talk about some of the leadership changes that we're expecting to see as we move forward in 2025.
Sure. And thanks everyone for having us. Zach Reeves with CFM. So as Ryan mentioned, the more things change at the federal level, the more they stay the same here. There was some expectation that Dees would take a supermajority in both chambers, but we didn't see that happen. The one thing we will see a lot of turnover, one area we'll see a lot of turnover at is in the leadership roles. So former Speaker Dan Rayfield is now going to be the Attorney General. Former Senate Republican leader Tim Knopp, who Ryan mentioned, he was unable to run due to the walkouts a few years ago. So that seat flipped. It's a pretty heavily D seat, flipped from R to D. That gave D's their 18th seat. And we have other kind of other folks in new. Former Ways and Means co-chair Elizabeth Steiner is now the state treasurer or treasurer-elect. So three pretty important roles that are going to be filled by brand new folks. So we're going to have a new, well, we already have a new a Senate minority leader, but we will have a Speaker of the House, Julie Fahey, who's going into her very first long session, which is when the biennial budgets are created. We will have on the Senate side a brand new Ways and Means co-chair, Kate Lieber, who was out in our neck of the woods a couple months ago touring the deflection facilities. This is her first go at crafting a state budget in what we don't have time to get into, but it's going to be a challenging budgetary environment. So you've got that combined with a fairly new Senate president. And then on the House side for the R's, we will likely see, well, we will see a new leader on the House, on the Republican side. Representative Jeff Helfrich, who just won re-election, announced that he is not going to be seeking another term as House Minority Leader. One familiar face to look out for, although nothing is set in stone. We'll all remember the name. Christine Drazan just won election to the House in her old seat in Canby after her gubernatorial run a few years ago. So one name to keep an eye on, you know, is she held that post before. Nothing is set in stone, obviously, but I think we'll stop there, try to get you all back on track. We're happy to cover any subjects, you know, if we want to dive deeper on anything, if you've got questions, happy to answer those.
And if it's okay, commissioners, I just want to add really quickly to just a couple dates to remind you of. So the next revenue forecast, which is what the governor's budget is based on, is on November 20th. So next Wednesday comes out around 9 a.m. And then we do have legislative days. I believe it's the 9th to the 11th, pardon me for not having, or 10th to 12th, excuse me, pardon me for not having that memorized. And then beyond that, we do not have a legislative calendar that has not been finalized yet. We've heard this week that we're expecting to see it around early to mid-January, which is not great, but hopefully we'll get it a little sooner. So that is our update and happy to take questions.
And Chair, for the members of the board, we will come back and talk about legislative agenda items, a little bit about what your priorities are moving forward and what we already know some of those priorities are as we've been working on some interim legislation. But we'll do that when we have a little bit more time. So
next Wednesday.
so we can get a skip if we go. So.
All right, do we have any other questions? Anything? All right, well, Ryan and Zach, thank you very much. Appreciate the quick update on and recap of the election, and we'll make some additional time to go over things more in detail. Thanks again.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Then do we want to do the ARPA? We've got 8 minutes.
60 seconds. So
Okay, American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA monies, and Monica Steele, Assistant County Manager.
Yes, so as we've talked about, we've brought this before you all every time we make any major changes to it. And the obligation date of December 31st, 2024 is coming upon us. And we've spoken with our auditors in regards to what does obligation look like, because some of these projects, are items that we still have to get under construction and stuff like that. And so they said that what we need to do is we need to transfer the funds to transfer the money to the funds that are going to be having those contracts put into place, and that will be obligation enough. And then we will continue to work towards getting those under actual contracts. And so in your agenda packet, I provided you with some of with the remaining funds that aren't currently under contract and where they will be getting obligated to. One minor change that I have is on the original one that I submitted to you, we had 1,345,000 going to the public facilities improvements. And that was to pay for the elevators and the HVAC systems in some of the buildings that we're going to be doing. We reduced that by 50,000 so that we could obligate that that 50,000 to an emergency operations plan update. So there's two items that we'll be doing that are in regards to emergency management. One of those being the ambulance service advisory plan assessment, and the other one being an update to the emergency operations plan. That is in coordination with the cities, and so they are also contributing, and so this is the county's contribution to that. Many of these items, such as the enhanced mental health services, and the grant administration, and public health infrastructure are things that we already have obligated, but we haven't done those transfers because we just do them on a quarterly basis. And so we will be instead transferring the remaining amount by December 31st. And so I'm happy to answer any questions. We will still continue to come before you all as we put contracts in place, because some of those things do include the disaster mitigation for the fuel station, as well as Westport sewer upgrades, and then the elevator improvements and such. But just wanted to put this on your radar so that way we can move forward with getting those obligated.
Okay, great.
And we'll get more, hopefully. I mean, all of my things were, gee, public health infrastructure. What does that really mean? So we're going to learn that as we.
Well, so those are transfers that we've been making all along in the last 3 years. And a lot of that has to do with the staffing capacity to build the public health infrastructure to be able to respond.
Okay,
And this would,
thanks.
post-COVID.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Any questions, Commissioner Thompson, Commissioner Tobin? All right. Thank you very much, Monica. All right, we breezed through those last couple items.
Why did that seem a lot harder than these?
We actually have 5 minutes before we have a vote. We'll go ahead and reconvene in regular session in 5 minutes.
Get here.
Commissioner Toyoka and I are not able to hear anything. And that's how it is.
All right, can you hear us? Oh, perfect. So we've just had the roll call and, did we not go through the roll call?
No, not for us.
I'm talking about Commissioner Webb.
I'm present.
Here.
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 I'm here as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, yep. And we will now move to the agenda approval. No, we're gonna make one change.
I move to amend the agenda, removing item 12.
Second?
Moved and seconded to approve the agenda, removing item 12. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. First item is business from the public. This is an opportunity for anyone to give a 2-minute presentation about any item on the agenda, except for public hearings, or any topic of county concern that is not on the agenda. Clerk of the board, are there any members of the public signed up to speak remotely? Okay, great. If you signed up, please wait until you're called on, give your name and address for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes to speak. Jeff? Jeff Davis? Okay. Do we have anybody else? Okay. Is there any way we can see the, like, who's
Yeah,
on,
something other
like,
than.
visual? There we go. Okay. Move on then to, you've signed up to testify. If there's any member of the public in person, do we have anybody that signed up to speak in person? I know we had one card here.
We have another person.
Okay.
Denise Davis just raised her hand
Okay.
online.
All right. Got Denise?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, excellent. Since somehow Jeff isn't able to speak, I'll speak on behalf of us. I'm Denise Davis, and we live at 79432 Ray Brown Road in Arch Cape, Cove Beach. What we wanted to say was good evening, Commissioners, County Manager Bone, and Director Henriksen. We wanted to say that we appreciate your allowing us to say a few words this evening. Jeff and I have continually been impressed with the staggering amount of information amassed and coherently presented for your board and Planning Commission meetings by Director Henriksen and her team. We just wanted to commend Director Henriksen and her team for their extraordinary efforts. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Denise. Now, I see that we have a Michael Lovitz joining us. Did you want to participate in public comment, Michael? Michael, can...
Muted.
Okay. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. Then we have two people that have signed up for public comment. Susanna Gladwin. Susanna? Oh, okay.
These are ordinance.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Susanna. So, do we have anybody else that would like to speak in person this evening? All right, we'll go ahead and close business from the public. And we'll move on to the consent calendar. Hopefully this will go a little smoother. Consent calendar. Denise.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second?
Moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar as presented. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. We'll start with Commissioner reports and Commissioner Thompson.
Oh, my goodness. Let me pass this time. I'm not prepared to speak at this time.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Toyoka?
Well, good evening, everyone. Sorry I can't be there, but remote tonight. My son turns 20 today, so we traveled to celebrate his 20th birthday.
Nice.
One thing is just general note, a lot of talk, conversations with a lot of our constituents locally about housing, right? You know, it's one of my keynotes of this last 4 years has been housing. And then right now we're trying to navigate, you know, ACP concerns, FEMA buy-up. And, you know, one thing we need to address is, you know, in our planning commissions and from city and county levels is maybe how could we be more accommodating to people, or how can we remove more barriers to get, rezoning or site development plans? How do we help expedite those processes for those, you know, from individuals to business trying to develop housing in our communities? How can we remove some of those barriers of time? We're working hard. I know the planning director is working hard on removing other barriers, but I think time is a big barrier as well. And somehow we can remove some of those, whether it's more frequent meetings of planning commissions or shortening timelines for staff. And I know they have a heavy workload as is, but however we can do that to adjust the timeline to help with those, removing that barrier, I think that would be a significant help into addressing some of the housing concerns in our area. And I'll leave it at that for now, and I'll come back to the next meeting with more issues.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Toyoka. Wish
Yeah.
your son happy birthday from us.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Webb.
Thank you, Chair Quaylen. There's been some pretty exciting things going on that have been supported by the Oregon Coast Visitors Association, which, as you all know, is something we have inherited. That Travel Oregon basically has given us a regional, a coastal tourism promotion organization, which has been really useful to especially throughout the coast, really, because since none of us are big, huge counties, we have trouble doing tourism promotion individually, and they've been a real asset to us. One of the studies that they have done, they got a special grant to do, which is to address the lack of public transportation that we have throughout the coast, especially on the northern coast. And they have come across with a report which is going to be an experiment next summer, where they are going to actually separate and apart, and this was a little bit in cooperation with our public transit agencies, but it was intended because, of course, with ODOT and all kinds of other transportation issues that we're all facing. So they used grant money to actually come up with a feasibility study that would lease vehicles, smaller vehicles than city-sized buses that would go among especially the three northern most coastal counties. So, and they've been shopping it around, and it looks like it's going to go. Like we're going to have enough money to actually do that. And it might be something that we could do that they think they can make it pay for itself. And it might be something that would be an enhancement just for the summer months, just for the high summer months. So there also was a recent presentation about the Salmonberry Trail. And I don't think it's gotten a lot of coverage in our local press. It has occasionally in the Oregonian, but it looks like it's going to be a trail that's going to go many miles across from basically the I-5 corridor to the coast. And we had a presentation by the executive director, and it looks like it's going to go. It looks like they've put all the money together to begin to actually start construction on it. And they have asked to come visit us to talk about a offshoot of it to come into Clatsop County. Since we have so many of our visitors are seeking to recreate in the non-beach part of our county, this could be a really nice thing. So I've invited them to come and do that. I think that's it.
That's great. Yeah.
Sorry, do it at the AOC meeting next week.
Yeah.
But you'll have lots of good stuff coming back from that.
That's great. Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Webb. Commissioner Banks?
So yeah, last week I attended a small table group discussion with the governor's office in regards to a legislative fix in response to the Habitat Conservation Plan. And what was readily established in that meeting was that the Habitat Conservation Plan made all of us losers financially. It made the Department of Forestry lose millions of dollars. It's making our community, our social services lose millions of dollars, but it's also making the school's equalization formula lose $22 million every biennium. And the legislative fixes that the governor's office provided the small table group outlined 3 options, and each of those options chooses one entity to be a loser financially. And our AOC representative shopped ideas through legislature recently to see which one of those ideas could potentially gain traction, and the answer is none. So we circled back to the drawing board, and I will admit that I was extremely frustrated to be tasked with solving a problem that I didn't create and our county did not create. And I also expressed my frustration that I felt that if there was to be a legislative fix, I wished that the governor's office would be the one launching it. And since we've been told that that is not the case, we are struggling and to find a legislative fix that doesn't defund entire entities further than what they've already been defunded. And so going into the FTLAC meeting, not this week. This week, we're going to be reviewing the models that the Department of Forestry is providing us in regards to our future potential or lack of potential, depending on which way the Board of Forestry goes. But our next, at the AOC conference, our next meeting, the CFTLC meeting with the entire body, we will be discussing what potentially we can do at the legislative level, if anything at all. And so to say that it is abundantly disappointing is really, really minor considering we're being faced with the FEMA BIOP, we're being faced with other situations where our social services are not going to receive their taxing dollars. It's kind of like treading water, but just barely, and, you know, semi-drowning a little. It's pretty bad. So that's an update for that side of what I'm working on. Just moving beyond that a little bit to Commissioner Toyoka's note regarding housing. I've had a few discussions, actually a few people reach out to me and ask me why the FEMA BIOP is such a bad thing. And because they look and they're like, you have all this land. And so the explanation being, no, we actually don't have all of this land. We are, you know, over 80% forested, and we cannot develop in those forests, either because we do not own them or because they are farm forests. And so just according to state code, we cannot develop. And so trying to share at the state level that we have a very itty-bitty living space with even a smaller amount of industrial lands available, that we really don't have options. And so having the FEMA BIOP layered on top of that eliminates our economy options even further. And so while at the same hand trying to replace an economy that has been slowly eaten at by other state agencies. So it's been a interesting conversation to have, to actually see when people look from the outside in, they actually don't understand the game that the cards that we've been dealt in the conversation. And so I had a wonderful person explain to me, what if Salem told Portland, we are closing the port of Portland? That is very, very equal to what we've been told in regards to our forest industry. And so the Port of Portland is a huge economy for Portland. And if they were told that they, due to biological reasons, they had to close, what would Portland say? And would Portland get attention? And so I feel like the urban-rural divide is really big right now, because nobody actually really understands the breadth of what that economy provides our community, and the primary, the secondary, and the tertiary losses that are going to be felt over the next few years. So anyhow, that's been fun. That is, and I had a very short childcare meeting. All of our grants are going off without a hitch, so that's a positive. I attended the rodeo, and I will have to say the fairgrounds and the fair board did an amazing job. And I do have to, please forgive me, Kyle, you've done an amazing job, but I have to give some big props to Mallory, the board member for the fair board, who took that and implemented so much passion and so many fun ideas for families and for our community into that rodeo. I was impressed. Yeah. And I want more of that. And so I'm just trying to figure out how we can encourage the fair board to clone that type of community engagement in the future. And then lastly, I attended the United Way along with our chair last night, and what an amazing event. And what a fun fundraising event, and to see and listen to all of the amazing things that they can do with the funding that comes through that event. It was awesome, but I will allow you to discuss that. So, thank you.
Well, no, thank you. Your daughter did very well on securing donations for United Way last night and selling those blinky pins, and yeah, that was awesome. I did want to thank our county clerk, if she's not here, but did a great job with the elections last week. So I had a lot of folks remark that it was ran very smoothly, and the entire department did a great job. Also, Jay Blake and Gail Hendrickson with the Economic Opportunities Analysis Open House last Monday at the CMH at the Cohen Room. Really good turnout. A lot of people showed up for that, and a lot of engagement. And of course, Jay, you did a great job kind of putting that all together and orchestrating it. And I thought it was a really good event. So good job to both you and Gail, and you answered every question that came up. So appreciate that. Yeah, I did get to attend I got to be a judge last night at the Iron Chef, which was my dream. Yeah. Yeah, it was awesome. And I got to, eat all the food. I felt a little bad because I got to eat it while other people are watching me. But yeah, just amazing talent that we have in this community. Just great chefs, great food, and then all these restaurants that participate in that. Everybody enjoys just going and sampling and picking the ones that they like. And it was neat to see, I think it was the Christian Academy, the Culinary Christian Academy. Boy, they were so excited to win. They were one of the vendors or the restaurants that actually got picked to be part of next year's event. And yeah, they were just they ran up to the stage and were so excited, and that was a big deal for them. So it was very cool. I had Cole Pack and NOAA meeting, but I'll go into detail on that. We got a lot on our agenda this evening. I'll talk about that at a later date. County Manager.
Chair Quilla, members of the board, it's good to be back after a couple weeks. I do want to thank my staff, Monica, for being available to your board and to staff while I was gone, and to all the staff for stepping up. We're never staffed at a level where there's not consequences when there's absences, so thank you to all the staff. I also want to agree with Mr. and Mrs. Davis about their comments about Gail and her staff. They do an amazing job, and I agree that the materials that they present really provide the Planning Commission and your board and the public to see the data behind the decisions and the rationale behind them. And so I'm always amazed by how much, and this agenda today is evidence of how much work is coming out of our community development department. And I just want to back Commissioner Quilla, and I know the rest of the board, about the election process. As I've said many times, the election process is the bedrock of this entire democracy, and it has to have integrity, and it has to have veracity, and it has to be reliable. And we are so fortunate to have a county clerk that can execute a fair and transparent election. And so I thank Tracy and all of her staff and all the election workers and all of our partners, the sheriff's office and everybody else who helped us get through the election, picking up ballots and such. That's all I have. Thank you.
No, I can't agree more. And just even on just one of our items this evening, which is the FEMA buy-up, I mean, Gail and Anthony and Don, I mean, you put in a lot of work just in the last 48 hours trying to disseminate information, figure out exactly what is going on. And I've been on a roller coaster the whole time, but I'm glad that I really appreciate all your hard work. Let's go ahead and move on to our first item on the business agenda, which is the Ambulance Service Area Plan Amendments and Personal Professional Services Agreement. And it's C7577, Amendment number 4 on page 63. And Justin Gibbs, our Ambulance Service Area Administrator. Welcome, Justin.
And Chair, Commissioners, it's a pleasure to be with you this evening. For your consideration are a number of changes to our ASA plan and a corresponding amendment to the contract for ambulance services. These administrative corrections amendments to the ASA plan kind of fall in 3 different buckets. There are some new performance measures that were recommended to be implemented, specifically around call processing and notification of ambulances. That's not something that was previously covered in the plan. And then most of them are more administrative in nature. I think, and I haven't double-checked this, but I believe the contract for ambulance services pre-existed the requirement that we have an ASA plan. So there were a number of performance measures that were only outlined in the contract They were not outlined in the ASA plan itself. So this is an effort to kind of realign and to migrate that language into the ASA plan. So we cut down on the number of amendments that are required to our contract. I think just administratively that works a lot better. And also, I think it aligns with the fact that the board has granted a certain level of authority to the Ambulance Service Area Advisory Committee to make minor changes to improve the system. So it aligns with that. And then the last one, which I believe is the most significant, is the creation of an EMS peer review committee. So the intent of that is to take a more systemic approach in how we evaluate our EMS system, because it is a system and there are a number of components to that. We don't have jurisdictional authority over all those various elements, but one of the things that we are required to do through the ASA plan is to encourage the relationships between those elements and for them to be conversing in a continuous improvement process to ensure that we are providing the highest level of service to the patients that are being served in the community. So that creates a peer review committee, incorporates membership of the various agencies that are part of our EMS system, and hopefully that will lead towards some standardization around protocols and procedure and training, continuing education for the providers in the system. And it really aligns with where I think, Clatsop County should go in how we evaluate patient care and really taking that systemic approach. All of this is in concert with the contract is up for renewal in 26, and I think as we move towards that and awarding a contract that we start to implement an EMS system plan as opposed to just an ambulance service area plan. And that's going to take, these relationships to move in that direction, because the state's laws and rules are kind of a minimum standard, and we want to really go above and beyond that. So with that, if there are any specific questions about the amendment, I'm happy to answer those. The overall request would be for approval of these recommendations. They will be applied, and then that revised plan will be submitted to OHA, the EMS division, for review before it becomes effective, and then to authorize the county manager to execute the amendment to the contract. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Justin. I see we have a couple questions. Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, Director Gibbs, I appreciate the skill and the effort that you're exercising in improving the relationships. I agree with you that those relationships are key to really effective public safety. On page 67 of our packet, we make reference to various zones and response times to be on scene. I think it would be very helpful to have a map to explain those zones. For example, we have 60 minutes to get to zone 6. So can you describe briefly for us, though, zone 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, so that we have a better understanding going forward what that means?
Yes, Commissioner Thompson, and thank you for the question, because this actually gets to those dollars that you approved to be obligated. One of the things as we prepare to update the ASA plan is going to be an assessment of those zones. The zones were originally created, I think, in the mid-90s, and basically they took a paper map and drew concentric circles out to the frontier areas of the county. So that's where you see the 60 minutes. The zone 0 is really the core area. So that is Seaside and Astoria, and then it just goes out in time from there. So they have additional time. And the reason those are zone 0s is because that is the posting locations for the ambulances. They post an ambulance in Seaside, they post an ambulance in Astoria, so they should be able to respond in those areas quicker. And then as they have additional ambulances available, they post at other locations throughout the county to try to reduce their response time. So hopefully that is a helpful explanation.
That's a good beginning, and I trust you to carry on to make progress with that. I wonder, when the state legislature is looking at a transportation system, I wonder if the emergency management response has input to those state policymakers and those state funders when we consider the impact on traffic congestion in tourism counties. I hope that you all are considering making input to the state legislature about the delays in service and the cost to life and well-being in rural areas that are tourism dependent, so that we can look for more support from state lawmakers. That's my urging. I can't demand it, but I hope you will. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Thompson, I appreciate that, and definitely would be open to submitting, recommendations. I will say one thing just for situational awareness for the board. I was just recently appointed to the EMS advisory board, which is a new board that was created under the modernization legislation, and was appointed by the OHA director to fill the ambulance service area administrator role. So I believe that will provide some opportunity as you spoke of. So
Yeah, congratulations on your new role and position.
thank you.
Commissioner Banks.
I appreciated in the proposed correction, any non-emergency or interfacility transfers would not have a negative impact on our ambulance service providers' abilities. I appreciate that add-in to the contract or into this. But I am curious, you state moving into this EMS type model, will that improve the ALS staffed ambulance levels to calls and services within our county?
Yeah, so that's one of the primary things that we've been focused on, especially with the feedback from our fire partners and their concerns. I will say we just met last week, and we're seeing consistent improvement in staffing levels. I think we're going to see, especially with the ambulance support that we're seeing from Washington County, I think we're now at a point that may be phased out. So I think we're moving in a positive direction. Response times are improving, and I think, our staffing levels are improving as well. And I think, on the EMS peer review committee as well, one of the representatives on there is going to be the community college, and that's hopefully going to inform the production of workforce locally as well. So,
just a follow-up. So, and just for point of record, I think, could you explain how MEDEX is subsidizing basically our EMS service? So for folks to understand that serving Clatsop County is not a money-making opportunity for MEDEX, that they have to make their money doing other activities within and without our county. So I don't know if this is a county manager question or if I just would like it as a point of information for public consumption.
Sure. I think, one of the, Chair Quaylen, members of the board, sorry. I think one of there's only a couple ways that you can really provide EMS services. And one model is a public model where there are public tax dollars that really they really underwrite the service, and you still get reimbursements, but they're focused on just the EMS response. There are some communities that do that, but typically that has been a well-established delivery model. What's more common is what we have, which is a contracted model with a private service provider. And since there's no public dollars that are going into this, meaning there's no tax dollars that are going into the EMS system, the contractor has to have a robust service model that allows them to pay for the EMS side, because the EMS side is dependent upon calls. So you have a lot of money invested and potentially few calls, which means lesser reimbursement. And so how they pay for that side is to do interfacility transfers and serve other private entities with their services. And so the benefit of the model we have is there's no tax dollars going into it. The juggling act, though, is to make sure that the EMS side is staffed always while they're still trying to make their balance sheet work by doing interfacility work and other private work. And so that's always going to be the challenge, and why we have franchises is that we want to make sure that the public purpose is served by the system. And I think that's where, Justin has a lot of experience with this. We're making a lot of progress to create the kind of collaboration that's really needed to have an EMS system. And that's what we're working towards. And so I think we're already making improvements, but I think even within a year, you're going to see a lot of improvement as we move forward. So,
Thank you for that explanation. It's a much better job than I would have ever done. And just thank you for working with our fire district so closely. They are a very passionate community in regards to serving their communities. And so I trust that you guys working together will result in an even better service and even better service over the years. I will say that as a commissioner over the next couple years, I will be pushing for the ALS staffing to be 100% to all calls. That's just a personal, I feel like our constituents, there's too much that could happen out here, especially with our tourist industry. And so that's just something that I'll be looking for in the future, is to make sure that ALS certifications are at least placed at each call so that the big decisions can be made. So, but it's not calling into question what is, like, everybody's doing a great job. So please know I'm not calling into question that they're doing, like, everybody's doing a great job. I just would like more, I guess. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Banks. Commissioner Webb.
Yeah, as the liaison to this group that we're hearing from tonight, I can tell you that it has been startling to me to see the improvements in response time and the willingness of our contractor to assume responsibilities themselves. They have been doing something that in my workforce board role, we wish more employers would do, and that is to hire people and pay them, even if it's minimally, to become certified. Very few people can have the luxury, very few prospective employees have the luxury of training for different positions. And our medics have now gotten themselves, I can't remember how many people they said they've hired in the last year, but it's been extraordinary. They've doubled their staff because they pay them to get their certification. And in all kinds of jobs in our economy, we're going to have to see that more and more, because employers simply have to invest in their own workforce. And medics has been very, very good about embracing that role for them. The other thing I'd like to point out is that both the county manager and our director used the word system. And I think that that's one of the things that Justin has done a particularly good job under our county manager's leadership in taking a look at this enterprise as an interrelated system. And it's pretty wonderful to sit with a few people who are in this room who are actually on the ASAA committee and watch people from totally different backgrounds who are just sometimes a really small piece of this system, but increasingly we're making it into a system. And that takes, anybody who's ever tried to coordinate, 25 cats, that's a challenge. And Justin's doing a great job with it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Webb. Are we ready for a motion?
I move to approve the ambulance service area ASA plan amendments and authorize the county manager to sign amendment number 4 to the personal professional services agreement C7577.
Second?
Moved and seconded to approve the ambulance service area ASA plan amendments and authorize the county manager to sign amendment number 4 to the personal professional services agreement C7577. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Commissioner Banks?
I just wanted to make note, I'm glad to hear the community college is picking this up also. It'll be a great addition to our nursing program. So, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, Justin, for
Yes.
all your work on this.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
it.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too. Next, appointments to the Fair Board. Kyle Sharpstein, our Fair Manager. Welcome.
Chair and Commissioners, this agenda item is to bring forward the appointment of new Fair Board members. We currently have 3 vacancies on the Fair Board. And we brought the applicants to you all at the joint session with the Fair Board and the Commission and interviewed them. And so this meeting is to appoint those positions to fill in the remainder of those terms.
All right. Well, thank you, Kyle. Did we have any input from the Fair Board on?
I did not receive any formal input from them prior to us conducting their next public meeting. We had another resignation on the Fair Board, so now they don't have a quorum and they were unable to
Got it.
any kind of recommendation.
Well, thank you, Kyle. Do we have any discussion on this?
Yeah, so I'm curious. I would like to, after witnessing how much how much work Mallory put into this, just the singular event, I'm wondering, if the commission would hazard, increasing their number to 7. Because what I'm seeing is that, there's just a lot of work to go around, and Kyle and his staff are doing an amazing job, day-to-day operations, with our large events like the Wine Fest and the Scandinavian Fest. But for these one-off events, having board members involved to be able to grow donations, to be able to grow communications with the public, to be able to really put the sparkle and shine on, like, personalizing, I guess, an event. I'm just curious, like, what are my fellow commissioners' thoughts on potentially increasing the number to 7?
I'm for it.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Can I ask Kyle, as the fairgrounds manager, what are Kyle's thoughts on
Wait,
possibly
I'm a
increasing?
commissioner too. I'd like to speak to that. I have my hand up.
I apologize, Commissioner Thompson. I was just continuing a conversation, and I didn't see you.
I think we can all just kind of, let's have, I don't mind hearing from Kyle, then we can go to our commissioners. Kyle?
Sure. I don't necessarily have a preference one way or another. I can see where it would be valuable to have more hands on deck. It's basically, the Fair Board is a unique board where, yes, they have this oversight role that their job is to be like you guys, to be the authority on the board and set policy and direction. But they also fill a second role, as in being really volunteers that help produce the fair and produce the events on it. So, having them be able to help participate towards those things could be beneficial. There's various different fairs that have it both ways. Some of them are down to 3, some of them have 7. I think there's even some that make more. I think if we had, board members that were prepared and ready to come to and be engaged and involved, that it would be fantastic. The other side of it is if there's 7 people that need to be coached a lot more, then that's a lot more workload. So, you know, there's kind of both sides of the coin on that. So I don't necessarily have a preference one way or the other. We can certainly do either one, and we have some great applicants, so
Yep.
it makes it kind of even easier to think about that decision with we have a reality of being able to actually move forward with that right away instead of saying we have 3 or 5 and we want to increase it, and then now we're trying to figure out how to make that happen.
Yeah. Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate it. Commissioner Thompson?
No comment, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Toyoka?
Thank you. Yeah, and I would agree that, you know, I don't know the charter on the fair board, but 7 members, if you look at the last interviews, the diverse backgrounds and business offerings that those members could bring to a fair board as you are trying to grow, you know, the possibilities of what venues, what events. I think having that diversity and background of from whether it's a sound engineer or software, I mean, you need those expertise to help build that board, and having more volunteer effort would be helpful as well. So that would be my input.
Thank you, Commissioner Toyoka. Commissioner Banks?
So just to continue the conversation, is there a potential to do this as a gradual increase over the next 3 months so that it's not Kyle needing to orient 5 new members? It would be Kyle orienting 3 and then adding 2 in after the new year? Or is that not, I'm just trying to figure out how the best how we can manage that and not overload an individual and a group. I'm wanting thoughts from other people other than what's spinning around in my brain.
Well, we have these applicants now. I guess my thought is
Well,
if we're gonna.
I would say Adam, but just Adam, and then I just don't want to throw 5 additional people at our,
Kyle can handle it.
Kyle can handle it. Blame him later.
Commissioner Toyoka, did you have?
Oh, sorry, I got to lower my, no. And
okay.
As far as that goes, I think just rip the Band-Aid, go with, if you're going to increase it, training 3, training 5, same difference, but it helps the board, you know, more expeditiously.
Okay.
Yep. So we have, if you're going to increase the number to 7, you would actually have to add 5, and you have 6 applicants. Am I correct?
Yes.
Oofda. Let me find my list. I personally would really like to have Bruce added to the list. I felt that he had a lot to bring to the table, just with his experience in other entities. And then I have appreciated Elise Bigelow. I've worked around and with her in the past, and she's regularly present at the fairgrounds throughout 4-H and FFA and Fair Week.
Mm-hmm.
And she's both of them are fairly well-known community members that would bring a lot of relationships to the table.
Yep.
I am listening for other folks' preferences from our interviews.
Well, I can agree with those 2 picks, definitely. Commissioner Webb, do you have?
I guess I was pleased at the variety from each district. There actually is no candidate from my district, but I too, I also thought that Mary Jo Gregoire, who was she the person who came on, I don't remember whether it was her resume that impressed me, or I don't remember.
Mary was the one that was talking about how she moved to the area and she has the 2 adult children that were gonna be attending the events, and they liked what was happening at the fairgrounds, and she wanted to get involved in the community.
Right, right.
Yep.
And so,
Work for Greenbrier, work for Nike,
yeah,
technology consultant.
yeah. So, I mean, I think I agree with the other 2 proposals, and I think I would add her.
Joel Homolak, he brought a lot of passion to the table. I felt he brought a lot of passion to the table, and I appreciated his relationships that he has throughout the community.
Commissioner Thompson, do you have any preferences?
I have no comment.
Commissioner Toyoka?
No direct preferences. I thought they all brought, a different skill set. So I guess I would leave it to like someone more intimately familiar with the fair, like Commissioner Bangs or the fair manager, to say what the skill sets would be most beneficial to the board, because they all brought something unique.
County manager?
Chair Quinn, members of the board, this isn't a comment about who you select, but I just wanted to say that if we go from 5 to 7, what we had was some replacements, and so there was 2 positions that, with the term ending December 25th, and then 1 term that ends December 26th. These 2 new positions would be for a 3-year term, so they will have a different term than the other 3. So I just want you to know that 2 of them will be their terms will end in 2025, December, another one will be December 2026, December 2025, so next year.
2020.
December of 2026 will be another one, and then you'd have 2 with 2027. So I just wanted to share that's an
2,
extra
if we
complication.
go to
You'll
the-
have to decide who is sitting in each of the term lengths.
If we would go to the additional, we would have those staggered. So 2 in 2027, if we add the 2 additional.
If you add the 2, then their terms would be for 3 years ending in December of 2027.
Got it.
And I think those would be the same dates that, the current 2 would also, they would end in 2026.
Okay.
Oh, excuse me, Chair, this is confusing because it's how they wrote in the statute. But there's actually, it set out the terms if you do add additional members. So if you added the 6th member, their term would expire 1 year from the January next following the appointment. And the 7th member would be a term to expire 2 years from the January next following the appointment. So the 6th member that you appointed would just be from a year from January. The 7th member would be 2, and that's according to statute.
And that would be, you're saying term ending December 2025 would be the same, as consistent with January, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you'd be adding a 3rd person to that 2025 date, you'd be adding a 2nd person to the 2026 date, and then someone for 2027, correct?
There won't be anyone for
No, there will be no.
There will be no one for 2027.
Okay. Okay,
Look at the can of worms I just opened.
I got you.
Well, I think it's nothing you did, it's just the statutes for fairs, just so your board knows, are very unique.
Yeah,
And,
they are.
and we're just trying to navigate those.
Okay, so we actually have, we've identified 4, and these are all really good candidates. Very difficult decision to add, folks when we've had them all come present in front of us, all strong candidates. But I do think we've had 4 that we connected with, that we felt
Yeah.
presented well, and we'd just be looking for that 5th person.
Well, tonight, we can't do it tonight. Don't we have to amend? I mean, we
No,
can't
it's
just
already-
decide to extend.
It's already in statute.
It's already in statutes and it's in the IGA that you can have up to 7. So we don't have to, we don't have
No.
to amend the bylaws.
We can add up to 5.
They,
Oh,
their-
I love
the
it.
Fair Board Charter says 5 members, but there's a few other things on the charter that could be updated as well. It might be something that would be appropriate.
Yep.
Once the dust settles on this.
Yeah. So who have we,
I've identified
So
Joel.
Are you
Homelak?
saying that we can do it tonight?
yeah,
Yes, that's what.
That's correct, yeah. According to the statute and the charter, you could just add the 2 members at any time. There's no need to change anything.
Wow, let's just do it.
Okay, so we've added Joel Homelak,
Okay.
Bruce T. Smith, Mary Jo Gregoire, and Elisa Bigelow.
okay.
That gives us 4 additional, so we would be looking for that 5th additional person.
Did anybody have any feelings between John and Elizabeth? I'm trying to pull the recollection out of my brain.
Well,
Mhm.
So during the meeting, John was able to remote call in, but, Elizabeth was on, and we weren't able to get her unmuted, and she sent the email afterwards.
Okay. That's right.
That's right. Thank you for that reminder, because I knew somebody was unable to get on.
Okay.
Okay, do we have any input on this? Do we want to?
So we have a lot of people from District 1,
Mhm.
and District 4.
We have the same amount, yeah, on 4 too, so.
Yeah,
I'm not certain that Elizabeth is still in district. Understanding she's,
okay.
Are you mentioning Bruce's name?
Yep,
Yeah, he's on the list.
yep, he's on there.
He's one of them.
Mm-hmm.
I could,
Gustav.
I'm zooming right through it.
Okay, so do we want to make an additional pick, or do we want to go, with the ones that we've identified?
And then maybe make another request for
I mean, is there,
forward.
that puts you to a board of 6, and that
yeah, and
sets
it's
you up
not,
for.
Yeah,
sets you up for trouble. So I don't know either of these, people personally.
no, I don't either.
I do know that John has, applied previously also, and he wasn't appointed in the past. I don't know. I think that shows he's had some long-term
Yeah,
Interest?
desire.
Mhm.
I would like
Trying not
one.
to input my opinion too much
Yeah.
into y'all.
Well, yeah.
but that's good information.
It is good information. I'm gonna pull up Elizabeth's email really fast and just, and,
So Joel Homelak, Bruce T. Smith, Mary Jo Gregoire, Elise Bigelow, and then John Cahermanes. That would be Cahermanes? That would be 5.
And that 5 would be added to.
And then we
the
could
two.
add those to our
And then we're. set.
board, and then we'd have 7.
I wasn't listening, but do that.
Okay. Okay, let's do this. Let's go ahead and add,
And if you just write it down, I'll read the motion. Did you highlight the people?
highlight it on
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So is there any, go ahead, is there any further discussion from Commissioner Thompson or?
Commissioner Thompson?
No, sir, I have no comment.
Okay.
Mr. Toyoka? Go ahead.
Yeah, hard choice between two. I like what John had to say. Email, but,
Okay.
I have no hardcore on either way.
Okay.
So did I hear you correctly? You appreciated the selection for John?
Yes. That is correct.
I move to approve, the appointments ending in,
So there are three that will be December
Do the first three.
Okay, and then-
Do the first three.
Wonderful.
and then do the next.
okay. So I move to approve the appointments of Joel Homolek, John Hermes. If I butchered that, I'm so sorry. Bruce Smith, with a term ending December 2025, and Mary Jo Gregor and Elise Bigelow with a term ending in December of 2026 to the Clatsop County Fair Board.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve Joel Homolak, John Karamanis, and Bruce T. Smith with a term ending December 2025, and Mary Jo Gregoire and Elise Bigelow with a term ending December 2026 to the Clatsop County Fair Board. All those in favor signify with an aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Those are difficult decisions, definitely, and I think it was wise to expand the board. And thank you very much, Kyle, for all of your hard work with the fair and doing a great job out there.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
We lost John.
Next is the selection of a FEMA pre-implementation compliance measure, page 80, and Gail Henriksen, our Community Development Director. Gail.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, Commissioners. This evening, we are here to have a discussion about the possible selection of one of the pre-implementation compliance measures, a PICM, that FEMA is requesting that each jurisdiction pick and make a decision on by December 1st. And so there are three PICMs that have been offered by FEMA, shall we say, and we were notified about these on July 15th. The first is to prohibit all development within the special flood hazard area, and that would be a permanent moratorium that your board would look to adopt if that was the chosen PICM. Obviously, there are pros and cons to that, mostly cons, not very many pros unless you are a fish or a salmon, which is also a fish. The second option is to adopt a model ordinance, or the third option would be to require applicants to prepare a habitat assessment on a permit-by-permit basis. And so, as we have worked through this process with FEMA since July of this year, we know that the amendments, the model ordinance, the habitat assessment are continuing to change. We know that the new model ordinance and the new habitat assessment will not be available until probably early December. But we do know that as we are working to maintain this balance where there are no good options, where we are working to do the best that we can to help our property owners to make sure that we can meet our housing requirements and our housing development. We are trying to balance all these different things. And so every one of your choices this evening comes with risks. Obviously, the highest one is to go to a complete and permanent moratorium. That would almost certainly result in several takings cases and lawsuits by property owners. Moving through with a model ordinance and the habitat assessment, which now FEMA is moving closer together, so they are becoming more one of the same instead of two very separate pathways. Both have possible potential risks. The model ordinance is probably easier for staff to incorporate into a code to be able to address clear and objective standards, which are required by the state, and to more clearly define what the mitigation requirements could be or would be under that PICM if it's chosen. Ultimately, if this does move forward at the federal level, we are looking at probably the same mitigation requirements, whether you do habitat assessment or model ordinance. So there really is not going to be much change at this point. I know that you had a discussion earlier this evening during the work session and the executive session. But staff is recommending that your board move forward with notifying FEMA by December 1st that we would like to choose a model ordinance to implement. And then what would happen is we would submit that notice to FEMA to meet that December 1st deadline. And then we would continue to issue our permits under our current codes as we work through the process of adopting a model ordinance, drafting and adopting a model ordinance. And we would have to do that by July 31st of next year, 2025. So I'm really here to answer any questions this evening. Again, as we know from earlier this evening and throughout the day, this has been rapidly changing. And so I'm here to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gail. Again, I reiterate my admiration for you and for what you've had to kind of contend with over this evolving 6-7 months of this. Well, it's not even that long. July 15th is when
it seems that long.
Seems a lot
doesn't
longer.
it? Yeah, thank you.
But even over the last, 24 hours, there have been so many developments, legal developments, and we've had to kind of recalibrate numerous times. And I think I really appreciate all your work with this, and I think that you've come on a really wise path to move forward. Do we have any questions for Gail?
So I think I want to reiterate my disgust with FEMA in this particular situation. And when we do email them with notification of a pick'em that we select, I would like that email to contain that disgust.
Made my
yes,
note.
thank you. And also for us to continue as a board to explore, opportunities of litigation with our cohort of city and other counties, because I think that this is an absolute abysmal use of federal government power, and it's pretty disgusting that they have not been able to even solidify any actual information up until this point to help the communities out. They've just laid a very heavy hand upon us. And I originally was of the no action or moratorium route because I really just want to tell FEMA, hell no. We can't, because that would put us into a situation. And so therefore we are at the route of choosing a pick'em. And so I am supporting number 2, adopt a model ordinance. Only because we have to do something. But I've been reassured that at any point in time we can change our mind over the next 6 months before July 31st. And so, and that us selecting a pick'em in no way, shape, or form supports FEMA in their process, but it does help protect our constituents and their flood zone insurance and other situations. So those are my thoughts. Thank you, Gail.
Thank you,
On a
Commissioner
side
Vance.
note,
Thank you,
for
everyone.
everything that you've done.
Yeah. I mean, we've been put in a no-win situation. The timeline was impossible to meet from the start. And this would at least kind of move us in a direction. But again, going back to our discussions in August about this too, I mean, I think I am exasperated as you are. The National Flood Insurance Program has nothing to do with the Endangered Species Act, and why we're discussing pre-implementation measures when they're not going through the NEPA process as they had promised to do. And we're then trying to react and put something in place prior to this being approved and and put in, it's just a real frustrating position, I guess. And I think that we've definitely, needed to do something, and I appreciate that we're going to continue to fight this with litigation. I think that's probably going to be the way that it's. Lots going to change in the next couple months. Commissioner Webb.
Well, my feeling is that, that we should not be building or improving anything in a floodplain zone. And I believe that development in floodplains is directly related to the environmental issues. But I think, I guess I agree with my colleagues that we're between a rock and a hard place. And I'd like to go with the staff recommendation.
All right, Commissioner Thompson?
I agree with the staff recommendation.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Thompson.
You seem to have lost John.
And John, he did text me. He says he's traveling, and so he's going to try to reconnect there, but right now we lost him. Okay, do we have any more questions, discussion, Commissioner Banks?
I just really want to reiterate something that you said moments ago. I do feel like that they are weaponizing the Threatened and Endangered Species Act. And that has no place with an agency such as FEMA. That was not why FEMA was built. And so associating their mandates with the Threatened and Endangered Species Act and mismanagement, reiterate the mismanagement of no biological review, no NEPA process, and not incorporating their actual other federal agencies in the conversation and waiting for their review is actually really frustrating.
Right.
But beside that point,
and I would just say, 80% of the community, we were on a call with COPAC, and 80% of those on the call didn't know what they were going to do on this too. So
Yeah.
everybody's twisting themselves up in knots trying to comply with this. And there really isn't there isn't a one solution that everybody's adhering to. I would just say for one thing about the floodplain, the city of Warrenton has an inordinate amount of floodplain. It's because the levees aren't certified and accredited. That doesn't mean that it's floodplain. That doesn't mean that it's flooding all the time. That means that it is an area that has been mapped at just because the levees are not accredited. And the levees protect from flooding every day for 100 years. They've sat there and made sure that that area does not flood. So I think to start regulating as though that's entire floodplain is wrong. And this is one of these things that comes in after your levees are not accredited. Just kind of coming in afterwards, and it's something that we have to fight against. It's the city of Warrenton has to fight against. Yep.
would you like a motion?
Yes.
Okay. I move the Board of Commissioners select pre-implementation compliance measure number 2
2.
and authorize staff to notify FEMA of the selection prior to December 1st, 2024 deadline.
We have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded that the Board of Commissioners select pre-implementation compliance measure number 2, which is model ordinance, and authorize staff to notify FEMA of the selected prior to the December 1st, 2024 deadline. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gail. And
I feel sad.
we're just now moving into our public hearings this evening. All right. First is ordinance 24-19, short-term rental caps, page 86. This is the time set for a public hearing on ordinance 24-19, short-term rental caps. County Council, we have the first reading by title only.
This is ordinance number 24-19 in the matter of An ordinance amending Clatsop County Code Title V, Business Regulations, Chapter 5.12 and 5.24, to establish limits on the total number of short-term rentals permits that may be issued in specific geographic areas.
County Council. All right, and Gail Hendrickson, our Community Development Director, we have the staff report.
Yes, thank you. So ordinance 2419 would establish a 10% cap on the number of short-term rentals. The cap would apply within a specific geographic area, and I apologize because in our agenda package, our maps are not included, but we have a series of maps that we'll make sure is included in the next reading. But primarily, the caps will apply west of Highway 101, except for Arch Cape. They would apply to all of Arch Cape, east and west of the highway. Back on September 25th, your board had a work session to discuss this, and you had made some suggestions and given staff some direction regarding change that should occur to the ordinance. And so, beginning on page 86 of the agenda package, you'll see that we have noted those changes. We included language that would allow short-term rental permits to be transferred through inheritance. I believe, Commissioner Banks, that was something that you were interested in seeing. We have that language on page 94 of your agenda package. We also added language to clarify that anyone who has an existing permit can continue to renew that permit even though the 10% cap is exceeded. That language is on page 95. We have updated and corrected the numbers of the short-term rentals that are west of Highway 101. Previously, we had included all of the short-term rentals, but now we've adjusted that. You'll see those numbers reflected on page 95 and page 108. And then we added language that would allow on a case-by-case basis, if for some reason someone could not meet their 30-day renewal, that would give the community development director discretion to review case by case and make a decision whether or not to continue the renewal process. That language is on page 94. And then finally, there were some revisions that your board requested regarding the good neighbor language on the flyer and not making mandatory requirements regarding beach litter and fires on the beach, but to make the statements more informational. And you'll find that language on page 90. We did have a few comments that came in from the public, which were forwarded to your board via separate emails. And really, we are here tonight to answer any questions that you may have. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Gail. Do we have any questions? Commissioner Banks.
I just want to make a note of, I appreciate the revised verbiage about the good neighbor flyer language, just because when we talk about beach fires and litter on the beach, that's actually state lands and that's not ours. And so but I appreciate the change and being willing to change that language. And I also appreciate your exploration in the transfer through inheritance and clarifying terms of renewal, even if a cap has been exceeded. So I thank you for all of your work. It was very important to me to make sure that these things could stay in the families.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much, Commissioner Banks. Do we have any other questions? Commissioner Thompson.
Well, thank you. And I don't suppose it's really a question. I want to thank everyone who wrote, people who cared so passionately about this. I want to assure that I read every single one of these, often multiple times, and tried to look for the best balance possible. I appreciate that neighbors have engaged with the commissioners, staff, and with each other to develop the best community solutions we can possibly develop. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Any other questions this time? Okay, are we ready to open the public hearing? This time I will open the public hearing on ordinance 24-19. Does any commissioner have a conflict of interest to report? Not seeing any. Look at the board. Are there any members of the public signed up to speak remotely? Okay, Jeff and Denise. Jeff?
Oh. Can you hear me?
Denise?
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, we can.
All right, great.
Yep, we can.
Sorry about earlier. Jeff Davis. Jeff Davis, 79432 Ray Brown Road, Cove Beach. Hello. we want to express appreciation regarding your decision to institute a cap on short-term rentals in Clatsop County's unincorporated zones, a move that will help ensure that our neighborhoods remain neighborhoods. We do have one major concern, however, the transferability clause in section 5.12.090.I on page 94 of your packet. Clause 1B in part reads, transfer of ownership to a trustee, a limited liability company, a corporation, partnership, a limited partnership, a limited liability partnership, or other similar entity. It seems to us that that clause 1B actively promotes a loophole that would indefinitely keep the percentage of STRs in our neighborhood, Cove Beach, at its current level, already more than double the proposed cap at 21%. Although the ordinance as written may keep this percentage from increasing, which is great, it is written to actively prevent the percentage of STR permitted homes in our neighborhood from decreasing to the capped level at 10%. We support allowing STR permits that have already been maintained by families for 2 or more generations, heritage permits, if you will, to continue to be transferred by inheritance to family members. What we don't support is for an exemption to be made for developers or investors to capitalize on these properties at the expense of available precious housing to full-time county residents. We hope that you will reconsider the transferability clause to remove the loophole for current STRs to become or remain corporate STRs in perpetuity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeff. And then Denise, did you want to provide comment as well?
No, that was from both of us. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And then we'll move to those that are here in person. And I know that Susanna Gladwin, you've signed up for number 13. Well, it would be best if you could speak right into the microphone and state your name and address for the record.
Susanna Gladwin, 82316 Highway 103, Seaside, Oregon. I just want to agree with Jeff and echo what he has to say. And I think he said it very eloquently, and I really don't have more than to add what he had to say. So if you just look at his comments and also kind of attach my name to him, that's all I need. Thank
Great.
you.
Thanks, Susanna. Appreciate that. I see that we have a Michael Lubitz that is raising their hand. Are you wanting to provide public comment? I guess they're...
He just got promoted.
Okay. Hi, Michael.
Hi. First of all, I just want to call out and admire all the great work that is being done. Listening to here at the public meeting, I really came to appreciate the scope of the work the commissioners and the commitment of the community. It's just really wonderful, and I just want to call that out and acknowledge it. I just had.
Hey, Michael, can I get your name? Can I get your address quick?
Yeah, it's 7998 Pacific Road, Arch Cape.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you. I'm not sure if I always forget. It's like it's 79998. There's 3 9s actually. I always do 2 rather than 3. Anyways, I just had several comments. One before I forget is the language as to the transferability to different entities. I totally understand Jeff and Denise's concern, but I would also like to point out that in consideration of transferability for estate purposes, it's very common to set up trusts and other entities. And so I wouldn't want those type of entities necessarily to be excluded, since it's just a way to transfer and keep, keep the tradition going with multiple generations, which I think was the intent anyways of the provision. So that's one. Two, I noticed that there was a study done as far as the permit costs, but there wasn't any available information shared as far as the study goes in terms of, the burden to the county, just the total number. So I would be really interested if there can be additional transparency on that. And by the way, the people that are responsible for that do a marvelous job. So I appreciate them very much. The other is there was no disclosure as far as revenue from the rentals as a source of revenue. At least I did not notice it to the county. And I'm just concerned about what the impact to the county might be in terms of revenue. My understanding is that existing short-term rental permits are grandfathered in. And I think that was confirmed again today in terms of the proposal.
Michael, can you wrap it up?
Yeah. I'm sorry. The other thing was, I just a concern here, and I just don't know what the Clatsop County or the commissioner's position is on this, is that we don't really get we don't get services as far as our roads go. And it's a constant problem for us. I know it's probably for everybody and everywhere in the county, but we just have a continuous navigating holes everywhere. Anyhow, that's all I'll say. Thank you very much for your time and for listening to me.
Yep. Thank you, Michael. Do we have anybody else that would like to speak on this public hearing item? Anyone? Okay. Do we have any responses from our public comment?
Yeah, just a couple responses, Chair. With regard to the transferability that was discussed in number IB, which is on page 94. So the transfer of ownership can only occur if it is you transferring your ownership into a trust, and it is only allowed for as long as the person doing the transferring remains alive and is the only owner of the trust or entity. So it's a very limited loophole, and a county council can certainly correct me if I'm incorrect in my interpretation. But as I read this, you would not be able to transfer ownership to a corporation or a different type of entity that is not me, basically. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. The other item regarding the fees and revenues, we will have a separate agenda item that will come before your board on January 8th with the fee increase, and there will be additional information provided at that time regarding the cost breakdown.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much, Gail. Do we have any other questions? All right, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing on ordinance 24-19. Do we have a motion?
I move to conduct the first public hearing of ordinance 2419 and continue the matter to December 11th, 2024 meeting.
Second?
Moved and seconded to continue the public hearing on this matter to our December 11th, 2024 meeting and conduct the second reading at that time. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next is ordinance 24-16 24-16, 24-17, and 24-18. Rule 16 exception in map and text amendments related to in-water disposal of dredged materials in the Columbia River estuary, page 108. This is the continuation of a public hearing on ordinances 24-16, 24-17, 24-18. May we have the second reading by title only, County Council.
This is ordinance number 24-16 in the matter of an ordinance adapting an exception to statewide planning goal 16, estuarine resources related to the flow lane, Thalweg disposal of dredged materials in the Columbia River estuary, and amending the text of goal 16 of the Clatsop County Comprehensive Plan. Ordinance number 24-17, in the matter of an ordinance amending goal 16, estuarine resources by adopting the Columbia River estuary Thalweg map. And ordinance number 24-18, in the matter of an ordinance adopting amendments to Article 1, introductory provisions, Article 4, zone regulations, Article 5, special districts, and Article 6, environmental and resource protection of the land and water development and use code to address dredging materials disposal in the flow land and expanding flow lane Thalweg.
Thank you very much, County Council. All right, do we have any additional information?
Yes, we do, Chair. You'll remember on October 23rd that public testimony was entered by Eric Riston representing Craig Law on behalf of Oregon Shores Conservation Coalition and Columbia River Keeper. Following that meeting on October 23rd, county staff met with staff from Department of Land Conservation and Development, the Army Corps of Engineers, Department of State Lands, and I believe Fish and Wildlife. And we crafted revised conditions of approval designed to address those concerns raised on October 23rd. And you will find those revised conditions on page 267 of your agenda package. The changes are highlighted in bold font, and they are meant to address a few different items. The change to condition number 1 is to clarify that this does not approve new in-water dredging locations. It is merely designed to address the in-water disposal of dredged material. We made a change to condition number 3, which is to clarify that the goal exception, if approved, would not apply to the area that is the mouth of the Columbia River, which is basically from the River Mile 30.1 up to River Mile 3 of the Columbia River. And the reason for that, I believe, is to protect, I'm going to say Dungeness crab. If I am wrong, somebody will correct me. I know several people here, but I believe that that was meant to address that issue. Condition number 6 and number 7 basically deal with the process that we would use or the standards that we would use to verify compliance, either for non-federal applicants who would have to submit applications or for federal agencies who just have to demonstrate compliance. And then number 7 deals with the reporting requirements and how those would be handled. And then finally, we added condition number 10 that would limit placement of dredged material to a maximum depth of 0.25 feet. And that is designed, again, to address concerns raised regarding sturgeon and Dungeness crab. And with those changes, staff continues to recommend approval. And we do also have the applicant here if you do have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gail. Commissioner Banks?
I think your last statement just solidified my question of you've spoken to the Corps of Engineers regarding and everybody is on board that this will effectively assist them. I don't see. Okay, I see head nodding. Okay, perfect.
Yes,
Thank you.
We spent a lot of time wordsmithing these.
Perfect. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that it would actually, kick it through the door for them.
Okay, we'll go ahead and open it up. Clerk of the board, are there any members of the public signed up to speak remotely? Annie Merrill. Annie, if you can state your name and address for the record, you'll have 2 minutes.
Hi there. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, again.
Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. My name is Annie Merrill. I'm the Ocean and Estuaries Manager at Oregon Shores Conservation Coalition. We focus on the entire Oregon coast, but we have hundreds of members in the Clatsop County alone, and we represent their interests in protecting the coast ecosystems and communities. So we're still concerned that approving the Goal 16 exception as written would result in the county relinquishing its authority to manage and protect the river resources within its jurisdiction. and also limit future opportunities for public input on dredge material disposal. So this exception, though well-intentioned, is too broad as it stands, and it would allow any potential user of the river to dispose of dredge material as an outright permitted use without local oversight or public input. So if approved without guardrails, future dredge disposal activities could put important resources that Clatsop County residents rely on at risk, and no corrective or preventative course of action could be taken to mitigate them from the county. We strongly recommend that the county place conditions on these activities to retain local authority to review future proposed disposal actions. So the most important condition for this is that dredge material disposal in conservation management units should be a conditional use rather than an outright permitted one. This small change would ensure that the county could still review new projects for consistency with resource capability of the area where disposal will occur, and it will also allow affected river users to provide input. Second, the exception should be conditioned to only apply to existing dredging projects and depths, such as, channel maintenance for the navigation channel. Otherwise, the exception can be utilized by any user of the river in unidentified situations to support dredging for unidentified projects. So this will ensure that the disposal of new dredging projects can be appropriately considered by the county and public. I acknowledge that the condition that was added that, doesn't outright approve new in-water dredging addresses part of this, but it still supports new dredging and doesn't allow any say from the county to actually influence the disposal itself. So we urge the county
Could
to
you
incorporate
close
these,
it up? Yeah.
and to safeguard public process and to maintain local authority. So yeah, thank you so much for your consideration on this.
Thank you. And what is your address?
Sorry, I don't live in the county. I live in Bend.
Yeah, we just still need your address for the record.
Oh, sorry. 867 Northeast Loxley Drive, Bend, Oregon.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Clerk of the Board, do we have anybody else excited to speak remotely? Okay. And do we have anyone here to speak in person? Okay. We'll go ahead and I'll go ahead and turn it back over to our staff. Do you have any responses?
Yes, just a couple of responses, Chair. With regard to limiting opportunities on the DM dredge material management placement, the Army Corps itself is going through this 20-year plan, and it is a public comment period recently closed on that, so there continues to be ample opportunity to be involved. With regard to the permitting, it is not proposed as an outright permitted use. It's a review use, which does require a public ad and a public notice. And there are certain requirements that have to be met regarding impact analysis and resource capability statements. So this is not a development permit where you walk in and get your $85 over-the-counter permit. So there are some guardrails there. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any additional questions.
Any additional questions? Are we ready for a motion?
I move to approve ordinances 2416, 2417, and 2418 with conditions of approval as shown in attachment H.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve ordinances 24-16, 24-17, and 24-18 with conditions of approval as shown in attachment H. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next is ordinance 24-14, Law Duck Housing Amendments, page 268. And this is the continuation of a public hearing on ordinance 24-14, Law Duck Housing Amendments. And we have the second reading by title only, County Council.
This is ordinance number 24-14 in the matter of an ordinance amending Articles 1, 3, and 4 of the Clatsop County Land and Water Development and Use Code to address standards for residential development.
Thank you, County Council. And do we have any additional information from staff?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Clerk of the Board, are there any members of the public signed up to speak remotely? Okay. Denise? Can you add her to the? Oh, okay. 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 Denise, you don't, yeah, she's got her hand up. Yep, there we go. All right, Denise?
Excellent. I think you're able to hear me now.
Yes, we are.
Great, thank you. I'm Denise Davis. I'm an elected commissioner of the Falcon Cove Beach Domestic Water Supply District. The district's address is 79387 Ray Brown Road in Cove Beach. The following comments assume that the proposed ordinance 2414 includes Cove Beach within the coastal residential zone as described on page 335 of your packet. Several decades ago, the Water District established policy and practice to service only one code-compliant single-family residential dwelling per parcel, as stated in its duly passed and authorized rules and regulations. Given this long-standing policy, the district will not sign off on water service connections for applications for dwelling attached, the proposed addition to the list of Type 1 allowable dwellings in the CR zone of Cove Beach. Furthermore, although somehow clusters, guest houses, RV parks, bed and breakfasts, and primitive campgrounds have made it onto the lists of allowable or conditionally allowable dwelling types in the CR zone of Cove Beach, I'd like to be clear, as the district's geologically fragile land and infrastructure do not support these types of development. And since the district's rules and regulations allow a single water connection to one single-family residential dwelling per property, the district will not approve water service connections for applications for the development of clusters, guest houses, RV parks, bed and breakfasts, or primitive campgrounds. In short, if the county proceeds in changing the land use zoning code to allow structures other than single-family residences in the fragile CR-zoned community of Cove Beach, then the Falcon Cove Beach Water District, in its sworn duty to protect its water sources and dependable distribution to its low-density septic-only constituency, will refuse to allow such structures or sites to connect to its water system. Thank you very much for your attention and careful consideration.
Thank you, Denise. Do we have anyone else that would like to speak remotely? Do we have anyone here that would like to speak in person? Okay. Do we have any responses from staff?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay.
I have a question.
Commissioner Banks?
And maybe you can answer this. Is that the same water district that is going through review regarding their water abundance? I know that we were talking about small water districts down in South County, and maybe Commissioner Thompson might have the answer to this, but there was a particular water district that had yet been reviewed for their ability to serve.
The discussion that we've had, Commissioner Banks, regarding this particular water district was, I believe, related to the Southwest Coastal Community Plan, and there was discussion about whether or not the number of connections, I believe, was correct, whether the number of wells was accurate, and there was a dispute between what was on the state's website and what was being provided by the water district. This is the same district.
So this is the same district?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for that point of clarification.
Yep.
Thank you.
Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Vice Chair Banks. In terms of connection to the water district, I know that there has been occasion inside the geographical entity of Cove Beach. It was more expensive for the homeowner who built, but they built a water catchment system so that the development could in fact happen even if it were not connected to the water district's supply of water. Other issues are, there are many, they're complex, they're long-standing, they're not yet resolved. So I won't speak to those, but I think it is possible to proceed with the changes to the LODUC, and that it is possible that there can be development because there are alternative methods of water provision for residents in the area. That's my understanding. I'm not a hydrologist, but I'm just talking about experience I've had with other neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. I appreciate your perspective. Any other discussion? Okay. Are we ready for a motion?
I move to approve ordinance 2414.
Second?
Moved and seconded to approve ordinance 24-14. All those in favor signify with an aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Great job. Turn it over to Jay. Okay, ordinance 24-20, time, place, and manner regulations for psilocybin and psilocybin-related products on page 514. This is a continuation of a public hearing on ordinance 24-20, time, place, and manner regulations for psilocybin and psilocybin-related products. May we have the second reading by title only, County Council?
This is ordinance number 24-20 in the matter of an ordinance amending the Clatsop County Land and Water Development and Use Code, defining and establishing time, place, and manner regulations for the growing, manufacturing, and administration of psilocybin and related materials within unincorporated Clatsop County.
Thank you, County Council. All right, Jay Blake, Planning Manager, is there any additional information?
Just a couple of quick items for clarification, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission. At the meeting on October 23rd, the board did request some additional information related to mapping, and our craft GIS team was able to very quickly put together a map of the entire county, showing areas where the growing would be allowed, where the manufacturing would be allowed, and where the service centers would be allowed. I did include all of those maps in your packet, and I did not think we would want to spend the time looking at each one of those this evening, but they are available for your review. So with that, it is fairly clear that a significant portion of our county would be allowed for the growing of these types of mushrooms. There are much more limited areas where the manufacturing would go, and that's primarily into the industrial zones. And again, limited areas where the service centers would go. The Planning Commission felt that they were most akin to like doctor's offices and would be most appropriate in those commercial zones. With that, I will close and offer myself for any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Jay. Any questions? Commissioner Webb? Thank you, Commissioner Bain. Commissioner Webb?
Could you explain the difference, or can you explain what the manufacturing, I mean, I'm a mushroom collector myself. I mean, I don't use, I mean, I eat them. But what is that in between, that manufacturing? What happens to a mushroom when it's manufactured?
Commissioner Webb, thank you for that question. Ironically, I spent a lot of time Googling the processing and manufacturing of mushrooms, so don't look at my computer too closely. But I will tell you that the processing, according to the Department of State or Land Conservation and Development, DLCD, allows the drying of the mushrooms as part of the grow, drying and packaging. The processing and manufacturing is when it is changing form, when they are applying either a pressure or a mixture to change the form of the mushroom so that it becomes some other type of unnatural or a product that's given or distributed at the service centers. So the drying and packaging is allowed as part of the grow farm operation, but any of the manufacturing associated with changing the characteristics of the mushroom would have to occur, according to this ordinance, in an industrial zone.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Banks?
So, thank you for all of your Googling. That way I don't have to do it. But, so I had a question just in regards to the drying and packaging. Do we have a permit process for that type of building? We've discussed in the past that it's not going to be an in-home business. We've discussed in the past, those parameters. Could you reiterate with me what those parameters would be? Because I didn't realize until you said that. Must have missed that in all of our conversations, that the packaging and the drying is part of the grow process. So.
Commissioner Bangs and members of the commission, it's interesting to me too, but one could argue that if you were growing corn, you dry the corn and you process the corn and you bag the corn and you ship the corn. And so that is kind of where that line is drawn by DLCD from a land use perspective. That processing of changing characteristics was all new to me as well in learning about this. I do know that in some cases, the mushrooms are not changed. They are just simply distributed in their current form, but there are other places where they are processed into other types of facilities or other types of products. But I think the difference there is, again, in where DLCD draws that line, and that's really from a land use perspective, where we needed to draw that line so that it was consistent with their previous interpretations. Some of that has even changed since the Deschutes County ordinance and some of the earlier ones. There have been more recent interpretations that are incorporated into our definitions.
Commissioner Banks?
And just to follow up, I'm looking at one of the maps, and there's a service center type 2 ability near the Captain Kidd Amusement Park and Seaside. And so I know that with the most recent election process, that 2 cities made different choices. How are we, not infringing is the wrong word, how will this all work on the landscape between us and our municipalities? I had wished that we maybe would have had more partnership or communication with our municipalities through this process, because I don't want to confuse people on what is allowed and what is not allowed and who they need to be seeking permitting from.
Commissioner Bangs, that whole area south of Seaside, the city boundary, it snakes around and does all sorts of weird shapes, and so it is sometimes difficult for people to see and understand where the edge of the city is and where the edge of the county unincorporated areas do begin. We only have the ability to have separation from schools. That's the one area that was very specifically outlined in the state law, saying that we can have a separation from all educational facilities. Doesn't list recreational areas or areas where kids may congregate. And so we don't have that ability to have additional separation. I think I'm addressing your concern because that is an area where we're going to see a lot of children.
Yeah.
That area, the service center would be a type 2 use. And so again, the neighborhood would be notified and it would go through the normal conditional use permit process.
Okay.
That would be the way that we would want to notify everyone that something might be changing. So.
Thank you.
And our boundaries from schools could go into a city. So for instance, the schools on the edge of Seaside, we would have to measure from the edge of the school property in the city of Seaside, even though it's actually in their border.
And we're not allowed to increase that distance
It is
or attach congregating like Parks and Rec type situations to the ordinance.
Commissioner Banks, that would be something I would want to defer to the county council. But because the schools were specifically listed in the language, that's what all of the units have used for their basis. So
And that's something I'd have to look into. I don't know that off the
Okay,
top of
darn
my
it.
head.
Okay.
Commissioner Banks, if I could add one more item. The ordinance that we're establishing essentially would replace the moratorium that we have. That does not prevent you from examining items and maybe tweaking the ordinance in the future if we discover that we have more leeway or if the language changes through OAR or the ORS process.
Okay. I would just like to make note that moving forward, after we're said and done with this process, that we explore areas where kids congregate, not just schools. I feel like the state sometimes does a disservice to entities like dance studios and other parks and rec, schools, so on and so forth. So if we could explore that,
I would definitely do that.
that would be great. Thanks.
Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I hope that when we're looking at observation of the impact of this ordinance, that we are using data-supported observation, that we're not just looking at, I would say, fears and concerns. I understand that we are dealing with something that is different, but again, data-supported monitoring, data-supported actions, because this is designed to be a therapeutic model, and I hope that we are hewing to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Oh, Commissioner Banks?
And I would agree with that, but this is also a controlled substance. So I feel like any controlled substance, we should be very cognizant of our young population under the age of 18.
Okay, do we have any other comments? Any questions for staff before we go into public comment? Clerk of the Board, are there any members of the public signed up to speak remotely? Okay. And then I do have Susanna Gladwin who wanted to speak on this item. Susanna?
Take your time.
Susanna Gladwin, 82316 Highway 103, Seaside, Oregon. I am going to read with some expansion of the comments that I did email earlier, just before 3 o'clock. And they are, because of the natural beauty of Clatsop County, the type of meditative therapeutic retreat that I associate with a psilocybin healing session could be a perfect fit for Clatsop County. But I am concerned that using the general commercial overlay and rural community commercial overlay as described in maps on page 553 to 575 as approved areas with a type 2 review would place the service areas along Highway 26, 30, 202, and 101. And this is about 15 of the about 20 that I could tell from the map, or near 2 helicopter landing sites, one of which is was just mentioned about where the children congregate. If I was in a session treating me for PSD and a police or fire and rescue with full sirens going on passed by where I was in a deep therapeutic state, or helicopters landing near me, it could possibly be very upsetting and detrimental to my recovery. I do want to say there were about 3 sites that seemed good. I'll get back to that if I have time. The PTS that the military in retirement sometimes experience has been treated successfully by these therapies. Some law enforcement also experience PTSD in retirement and could also possibly use this therapy. I hope you consider adding a residential agriculture overlay with type 2 review for more areas allowing service centers. And you would consider this if you need to add plans for next year, if you need to consider the addition of RA zoning. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Susanna. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Susanna and I had a nice conversation yesterday afternoon. It's nice to meet you.
Yes.
So,
And then, clerk of the board, do we have anybody else that has signed up to speak? Okay. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time. Do we have any responses?
not at this time, sir.
Okay. Do we have any further discussion? Are we ready for a motion?
We are at,
Are you ready for a motion? I move to conduct the second public hearing for ordinance 2420 and adopt ordinance 2420.
second?
Moved and seconded to approve ordinance 24-20. All those in favor signify with an aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you, Commission.
Thank you very much, Jay. And we don't have any other items on our agenda this evening, so do we have anything for the good of the order?
I can pick my daughter up from basketball.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody, and we'll adjourn.